So now we're going to bring the results of our groundbreaking report to life. There's research that contains original data and is backed by real-world delivery experience. And it was designed to help organizations to approach custom software in the age of AI and to bring those insights to life and talk through the practical implications of those insights. I would like to welcome up to the stage two colleagues. One is the director of our advisory practice, George, who John mentioned a moment ago, George Lynch. And the other is Chris Weston, senior technology consultant. So if I can ask them both to the stage for our report, that would be fantastic. Here you go.
Sorry, man. Stand over here. Yeah, so morning, everybody. So my name is George. I'm the director in NashTech Advisory. First to say I am this tall. This is as tall as it gets. If I hide behind here, I might disappear. I'm also speaking English, importantly. And unlike our colleagues in Vietnam, I don't have the benefit, neither do you, of caption layers, so you'll actually have to listen to what I'm saying. So first of all, thanks to Nat, and thanks to John for his introduction in opening today's event. So I've introduced myself, George, and this tall gentleman beside me is Chris Weston, one of our our senior but not too serious technology advisors at NashTech. So really, I'm here to represent the NashTech point of view, to introduce our new report, and Chris is here to represent you, the CTOs, the CIOs, and the tech leaders out there who are probably a bit more than just a bit curious about the report we're going to show today and what it means for you. Now, that's all the pleasantries out the way, or maybe a few jokes. And we're going to start with a small warning. I would say the next 30 minutes of the day are going to influence the rest of your day, because we're about to make a series of statements that set out a point of view, not just my point of view, although quite a lot of it's mine, but a collective point of view from NashTech that will hopefully shape the breakouts you attend today, every debate you have with colleagues, and hopefully those moments you go, hang on, actually, that George is saying something quite interesting. I maybe want to write it down that you have today. And then those who know me well enough that I wander around stages, but I also like to tell a story, right? I'm a bit of a storyteller, not as good as Billy Connolly, but I like a story. So what this story goes as follows. So I meet a lot of organizations, and they have a brilliant, ambitious idea. Something that's genuinely theirs. Maybe it's a better customer journey, a faster onboarding flow, a smarter pricing decision, a more efficient claims process. You name it, our clients are not short of great ideas. And then that idea enters what I call the enterprise Bermuda Triangle, where ERP, CRM, and the way we've always done it quietly turns into the place where you try to build differentiation, and where good ideas start to lose their edge. Across every industry, we see the same pattern. Platforms designed to standardize the core quietly become the place where we try to differentiate the business. And that's where complexity, cost, and compromise creep in. And genuinely, I'm not even looking at my notes, that happens all the time. People go, hey, we'll use the CRM to do that thing that's really important for us because we invested in the CRM. You need to think differently as a business. So when it comes to these core platforms that become the default answer to every new idea, they stop being foundations and they start becoming constraints. And before you know it, the thing you thought was going to differentiate you turns into a very, very expensive customization project. So that's what I think. But what we decided to do was commission our partner, Vance & Bourne, to conduct an independent research, not to validate what we thought, but to actually challenge what we were thinking. And we surveyed 1,000 technology leaders across 6 territories in the world, spanning both enterprise clients and the guys and girls out there who actually write code and sell it for a living, to test that theory. Now, our theory was simple. Custom software is easier to create and manage than ever before, and it can be the difference between organizations succeeding or failing, because it's where differentiation lives. So here are the 3 statements that we're putting on the table today. So first of all, As we said earlier, modern engineering makes custom software the differentiation layer. Now, commercial platforms still matter, but AI will fundamentally change how all of that is developed. So that's what we're putting forward today. And this is the context. And here's the line that really matters for the rest of the conference. Standardise the core, differentiate through custom software. Of course I would say that, wouldn't I? But there's good data to back this up. And the report indeed does back that up, which is really good. Organisations are blending approaches, not custom everywhere, not buy everything, this kind of buy versus build debate that goes on in many organisations. But it's about being intentional. Of course, they'll lean on packaged software for speed and compliance, and then they should build the layer that makes them distinct. And what's driving that? Well, integration is a big one, and technical integration specifically. There's a people integration problem as well, but integration is a big one. And we found in the survey results it's both the big driver for custom software, but it's also a big blocker. And the report will call this out repeatedly. Integration is the universal pain point. And it's where transformation programs can slow down, costs will rise, and value gets stuck in limbo, which is why one of my favourite so hot lines from our speaker notes today is, treat integration as a strategic piece of infrastructure, not just plumbing. Because once you treat it as plumbing, you fund it last, and then everything else leaks. And yes, I know it's something some of you are thinking right now, George, this kind of sounds like a pitch for building lots of custom software. And again, it isn't. In fact, the report is very explicit in this regard. The winners won't be those who build the most. They'll be the ones who build with purpose, with governance, and with measurable outcomes. So today is not about being pro-custom software or indeed anti-COTS. I'm neither of those. It's about putting each thing in its proper place. Keep the core stable, keep the controls strong, and put innovation where it can move in a custom layer designed around your business. And that's why this matters for the rest of today. Every breakout today, which will be a discussion again about build versus buy, integration, governance, operating models, value tracking, is essentially a different angle on the same question. Where are you relying on generic tools to do something that is unique to your business? Because that's the real test. And if you remember one thing, and I'm going to borrow this line because it's too good not to. AI, and that's the first time I think I mentioned AI, which is kind of a long time in a speech about AI. AI makes the cost of weak foundations show up faster. Poor data quality, poor controls, poor governance means that you try to put a veneer of AI on top, everybody's going to get exposed. So we can't just add AI and hope the stack behaves. We have to standardize the core, build the right integration and governance foundations, and then, and only then, differentiate deliberately. Right. So that's the intent for today. We've set the stakes, we've set the lens, and now we're going to test those ideas together. But don't ask me any questions right now. Properly, we'll do this through the data we will share with you later, the breakouts and the real-world stories in the room, and of course downstairs when we're having a chat. And if any point today you think, I'm not sure I believe any of this, please do what I do in meetings all the time, to the point where I think it gets quite annoying. I just start asking questions. Why not? So let's move on to the next part. Who did we ask? We didn't ask ourselves. I didn't look in the mirror, right? So I wanted to spend a few minutes on a simple question about who did we ask. Because if we're going to use the statements we made earlier, they need to be grounded in something that's more than opinion. And we live in a world of opinion. I'm always surprised how our industry is full of opinion. It's a bit like a fashion industry. There's a lot of CV-driven design out there. So we have to think about real quality data points. And just to reassure everyone, right, we didn't do this report by me asking a few mates in the pub, right, who've all got great opinions on this, or a coffee shop. And we didn't do it in a quick LinkedIn poll. We commissioned independent survey from our partners, Vance and Bourne, and we surveyed, as I said earlier, 1,000 technology leaders across 6 territories, spanning EMEA, North America, and APAC. And the good news is there's a bit of consistency in what they told us, which is great. And also, the people we asked weren't just what I'd call interested observers, people with an opinion for the sake of an opinion. They were board level, C-suite, and senior technologists who have hands-on experience across the things that make software real in organizations. So those were people who are backgrounds in engineering, software development, data, project management, and IT ops. And we deliberately focused on organizations big enough to have real complexity. So between 500 and 10,000 employees across multiple sectors. So just to be clear, these results aren't coming from small startups, or even indeed the mega global outliers out there who are both sort of on the edges. We actually asked people that I would refer to as the messy middle. I think we're all in the messy middle somewhere, where most of us actually operate. And finally, and this is important, the study covered 2 audiences. We spoke to 850 enterprises building software for internal competitive advantage, but we also asked 150 ISVs who are building and selling software as a product. And that gave us 2 vantage points on the same question. What it takes to build software that actually delivers outcomes. So when we talk today about differentiation, about the role of commercial platforms and what changes next, it's grounded in a broad, independent view of what leaders are seeing and doing right now. Now, what did we ask? So we said, who did we ask? What did we ask? Now, the obvious next, who did we ask? So because we didn't want to have nice opinions, we wanted something that tests our theory properly and gives us a baseline to rerun every year so we can track what's changing and what's working and where we can adjust our thinking. We had these 6 areas which are very deliberate. They're the moving parts that determine success in custom software, and also they're tightly linked, right? These are not randomly selected by me. If you change one, the others move, and it's a bit of a systems thinking approach here. So first is strategy and prioritization. We asked organizations why they choose to build solutions rather than buy them, how those initiatives align with business goals, and which outcomes they measure. Because this is where the whole thing either becomes a competitive advantage or just another busy program, and I've been in lots of those, with a lot of activity and not too much impact. And here's a gentle challenge for this audience. If you can't describe what you're differentiating on in one sentence, you'll end up differentiating by accident, usually by over-customizing a system of record. Second, AI adoption. We asked about expected impact, adoption horizons, and crucially, the foundations needed to scale AI safely. So how do you go from a POC to something that's in production? That's intentional because the report's point of view is clear. AI isn't just a feature you bolt on. It's changing how the stack itself is designed and operated. So we're not just measuring hype on year on year, we're measuring readiness. And that gives everyone in the room a practical takeaway. If your foundations are shaky, AI will show up really quickly. And I think we've probably experienced this in the room and tried to talk CEOs off the edge. Third is partner value. We asked what buyers look for when selecting a service provider and how those relationships are governed. Why? Because most organizations don't deliver this stuff alone, and the quality of your partner model becomes part of your operating model. The challenge question here is simple. Are you choosing partners based on outputs or outcomes? If it's outputs, you'll optimize for busy. If it's outcomes, you'll optimize for value. Fourth, delivery discipline. We looked at quality versus speed, risk management, and governance practice, and how teams address capability gaps using internal talent, partners, and offshore models. We asked this because our theory isn't building is easy, it's that building is more accessible. And the differentiator shifts to how well you deliver and run it at scale. Speed is great, but if quality and governance aren't there, you don't go faster, you just arrive at rework sooner. Fifth, a product-centric lens for ISVs. This is where we asked about market opportunities, go-to-market channels, customer KPIs, time-to-market accelerators, scaling metrics, and revenue models, and lots of other questions. And really, how ISVs deal with early scalability issues. I talked a lot of companies are going from startup to scale up and scale up to mature. That's an inflection point. It's a real challenge for some. And the way we look at this is that enterprises build for internal advantage, and vendors build software as a product. Different pressures, same truth. Differentiation shows up in the product decisions and engineering models that sustain them. 6, and finally, hopefully the last one, integration and compliance. We asked about the realities of connecting to systems, legacy, legendary, or otherwise, and managing data securely. This is here because integration isn't a background technical detail. It's the thing that determines whether your differentiation layer, which you mentioned earlier, is actually deliverable, supportable, and safe. And it's also the best reality check for our annual survey. So every year, we hope, we can ask and we can look at how we're reducing friction or just adding more clever things on top of old complexity. And I've got tons of stories about legacy complexity, how it holds things back. So listen, those are the 6 areas. And the important thing is they're connected. Strategy is intent. AI adoption changes the stack. Integration and compliance decide what's feasible and safe. Delivery discipline determine whether it lands. Partner value shapes how you scale capability. And the product lens tells us how the best builders think about differentiation, metrics, and momentum. And by structuring our survey this way, we got 2 outcomes. One is we can test the theory we opened with, that custom software is becoming the differentiation layer. And 2, it becomes an annual pulse check. We can rerun to see what's shifting, what's improving, and what's still stubbornly hard. And we'll talk about some of the things that are hard in a minute. Most importantly, it should give you some practical takeaways. And there might be some moments today when you think, hang on, maybe we're doing it the hard way. So these aren't just 6 topics, they're one system. Change one, and the whole system responds. So that's enough of me on my one-man act. Chris is with me today, and we're now going to do our famous from me to you double act, if those of you know who that is. So these are the emergent themes. So I want to talk to Chris about this a wee bit. These are the levers that determine whether organisations can genuinely differentiate through software, and they make us a baseline we can run year on year. Now, when we analyse the results, they naturally, and thank God for that, because I got all the results and I had to figure out what did it all mean, collapsed into 10 themes. Think of these as headline lessons, and importantly, they're connected. One theme tends to trigger the next. So, Chris, we've actually spent quite a lot of time, sadly, over a pint or two, looking at these outputs. And I think, and we think you agree, there are some far-reaching implications, but what's your view?
Yes, indeed. And thank you, George. I think that's the first time I've ever spent so much time with you talking and me not saying anything. That's such a, the strength of will to keep my gob shut. But this is all absolutely right? We've got lots of themes that have come out of this report. They affect us in very different ways, right? When we're making decisions about technology, it's our job to decide, okay, is this trend relevant to me? Is it going to affect my business? Is it going to affect this decision? Or is it actually something I can leave behind? So that's what I'm going to try and do with George, is bring some of that out, figure out what it is that you as an audience and as us as advisors as well, we need to think about when we talk to our clients.
Thanks, Chris. So we're going to look at the themes in turn. And again, this is the classic me. I'll ask him a question. He's got to answer it. So the first theme is a big one, right? Custom software is a differentiation layer. Now, the data says organisations aren't replacing all their COTS systems. They're using it as the foundation and building custom where they need advantage. Indeed, why is that practical? 70% of the survey respondents would choose custom over COTS when integration, control, and customer experience are the deciding factors. So if you were to take one question into the day, it's this: where are you asking a direct tool to do something that's unique to your business? Chris, does that align with your experience when you talk to clients?
Yeah, I would say that over the last 18 months, something's occurred to me independently, and I was really interested to see that it backed up in this report, in that over the years, we have essentially moved into this rote thinking of, if you're thinking about building software, you should think about it and then you should buy it. And if you really want to build it, you should think about that and then buy it again, because building software, it can be complicated. It can be a complex thing to do. But actually, because of the things that we're seeing in our technology right now, and we're seeing it in the work that we do, technology is there to help us build software far more easily now. Better APIs, CI/CD in terms of more effective deployment. The AI tools, generating code sometimes, but just documentation, test cases, test setup. Are we doing this right? Are we doing this the right way now? Are we making decisions on a 5 years ago idea? That's what we need to think about. So if we can start seeing COTS packages, look at that and build out the infrastructure and build out their ability to be customized, we might see a change in that. But I do think the needle's moving.
Thanks, Chris. And then we look at theme 2. So removing from what would be perceived by many to be the modern technology stacks, and a lot of us are actually building what we think is the modern technology stack, but we never really arrived there, probably not a destination. But there's something else that's emerging, and we'll talk about this later today, called the AI native architecture, built on trusted data, controlled models, and automated workflows with guardrails. And the key message here is, as I mentioned earlier, AI isn't just an add-on. It's actually going to result, I think, in a fundamental reworking of how technology is designed and operated. Our survey shows the momentum is already here. 85% of the survey respondents, particularly the enterprise ones, say they have begun or will begin to adopt AI into the stack in the next 12 months. Chris, what does this shift to AI native actually mean for organizations trying to figure out what the next architecture roadmap looks like?
Well, AI native. I mean, that's a phrase that's thrown about a lot, right? We see it everywhere. But in practice, what does it really mean? I mean, these days, in a future tech stack, I think it's like 3 layers. You have the enablement layer, so that's your data, organized, got governance around it, you can access it at scale. Then it's the model layer, where you've trained either your own model on your own data, or you're using a foundation model from somebody else, and you're using that model to generate the insight. And then you're using the experience layer. What I see is a lot of organizations, for very obvious reasons, because this is what they're being sold, is they're going straight to the experience layer because that's what makes the board, clap their hands and maybe give some money. Where actually, if you do that without doing those first 2 pieces first, you're, as you said before, George, right? You talked about this. You can be setting yourself up for a problem because your systems aren't necessarily set up to do that. So getting that enablement layer, that model layer, that experience layer in the right order, really important. And I think if we start to see, and my little guess on this is, start to see more kind of small language models being trained on company data to address individual niche requirements. If that starts to move the needle, then I think that enablement layer will be easier to justify, and your model layer will be simpler and less costly to run. So that's what we'll be looking forward to.
Thanks, Chris. And we're actually going to talk about AI maximalism about 3 o'clock this afternoon, myself and Tom, where we're going to posit a theory on where we think AI native stacks may well be the future. May well be the future. Nobody knows the future, right? So we're living in a huge period of uncertainty. So theme 3 is the reality check. Integration is the top driver and biggest blocker. Integration is the #1 reason in the survey that people choose to build custom software. 44% of the respondents cite it, but they then cite it as being the biggest challenge for custom delivery, 40%. So the headline here for me isn't as simple as it sounds, but what is important is that integration isn't plumbing anymore. Remember, infrastructure was plumbing, and then we did the cloud. And we treat integration as, we can treat integration as just a layer that just has to be competent. Well, actually, integration becomes a strategic capability as the edges of your organization become increasingly porous. So this is effectively the integration paradox. It's why people both build and why they struggle. Now, that's what I think and that's what I see, but obviously, Chris has always got a better view on things than me, so I'm going to ask him what he thinks.
Indeed, correct. So, look, integration has improved massively over the years. Those of us with a bit longer in the tooth, we remember like point-to-point, very hard integration. It wouldn't always work. What have we got now? We've got far more better API methods, far better API hygiene. We've got event-driven architectures. We've got far less proprietary standards than we used to. So the tools are there. The The problem is the scale has got to the point now where we're asking far more systems to communicate far more data with each other. So whilst the technology is improved, the scale is also there too. And we still have a lot of older systems that don't necessarily have an API layer or have very sort of clunky, flaky APIs asked to deal with new AI sometimes driven systems. And kind of, as George was saying, if that happens, if your underlying, what I would call the enablement layer isn't working, then you just end up with more problems, and you end up with a question from your auditor about how did that work and how did that data get there. So will we see AI tools starting to be used? I think we'll probably hear Benedict Evans talk about this a bit later.
Yeah.
Maybe touch on it about this whole thing about natural language being the interface. Have we got enough compute power to make that happen? Will that reduce our need for hard integration? We'll see, but that's kind of one of the things that I'll be looking for. George.
Oh, you're finished, Chris? Okay, right, thanks for that. We've got about 5 minutes left, and we'll probably take a lot longer than that, so apologies to everybody in the AV side. So theme 4 is about ambition is high, readiness is mixed. So people generally expect AI to be generally a net positive, and that's not my mates in the pub, that's the people we talk to. That's in fact 75% anticipate a significant positive impact on custom software. But when we asked about what slows adoption, the answers were very human. So limited in-house expertise, integration hurdles, and not enough operational foundations like ML ops and agent ops, and then the latest and greatest X ops, which have come out from some of the big hyperscalers. So the wave is real, but foundations decide whether or not you surf it or swallow the seawater. That was a lot better in my head, that line. So the gap between ambition and the gap is between ambition and readiness. So Chris, is that just a bit of a timing issue in terms of organisational maturity, or is there something more fundamental at play here?
It's a good point, and it is far more fundamental, I think. We've learned lessons from various technology iterations before that. When cloud came along, you could kind of start in the cloud, you could lift and shift, you could kind of halfway use it. Some people are still there. Mobile came along, you could take a website, you could maybe put a mobile wrapper around it. This is a different kind of technology, and I'm going to make no apology, I'm going to keep going back to this fundamental point about have you got the foundations, the fundamentals right to power the next level? And I think we can end up seeing